Hello, and welcome to another interview for the Jesuit Schools Network's 50th anniversary celebration. I'm Julia Andretta. I'm the communications coordinator for the Jesuit Schools Network, and I'm joined today by Lorraine Ozar, who has agreed to talk to me a little bit about her experience with the JSN and the JSEA. So first of all, good morning, Lorraine, and how are you today?
Good morning. I'm great. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us today. So let's just get started with a little bit about yourself for the folks watching who might not know you.
Okay. Well, I'm Lorraine Ozar, as Julia said, and I am currently, as of June 2019, retired. But I was when I retired, I was the Andrew Greeley Chair in Catholic Education in the School of Education at Loyola University, Chicago, and the founding director of the Andrew Greeley Center for Catholic Education. Prior to coming to Loyola in 2003, I had worked at Loyola Academy in Wilmette as the associate principal for faculty and curriculum development. And prior to that, I was a consultant for the high schools in the Archdiocese. And so my history with JSN, with JSEA first, turning into JSN, dates back to the mid 80s when I was invited by Bernie Bouillet, who was then on the Committee for Research and Development of the JSEA. They were meeting in Los Angeles and were going to explore the topic of lay collaboration in Catholic schools. And so as my experience, the JSN has often been at the forefront of what was coming and then trying to get the schools involved. And I've always respected and admired that. So we met in Los Angeles. I was invited to be a consultant about how dioceses would be experiencing lay collaboration, which was just sort of coming on the scene. And then over the years, I stayed involved. I presented at many colloquia and seminars and were part of a couple really exciting projects, the 2020 Futures Project and the Curriculum Institute held at Loyola University in 2004. And so I continued to be connected with them. And it's been a great, professional and personally enriching experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, you've got a deep connection to Jesuit and Catholic education. Many, many years of service for which we are all extremely grateful.
Thank you.
So my next question is, what is your understanding of the JSEA/JSN's mission? And over the last 50 years, how would you say that they have fulfilled that mission?
Okay, well, and I know I got your note that said, don't look.
Don't look at the don't look at the
Well,
website.
for me, the JSEA, the JSN, the mission is to support Jesuit pre-secondary and secondary schools to really more deeply understand and then actualize, live out their Jesuit Ignatian Catholic mission and vision. So, they're a support to the schools. And so in that capacity, I think what they've done to follow that mission is provide lots of resources, some of which they develop and then disseminate to the schools. I think they've done a great job of continuing to bring people together, to collaborate, to build networks. Their colloquia and symposia that just keep on, and the Ignatian seminars to help build a pipeline of leaders. I think that's been an important thing. And then the conferences, as I mentioned, like the curriculum conference, the visioning conference, and so on. So I think they've really done a lot to support the schools and to keep challenging them to be looking at what's cutting edge and what's coming. And, I know, and I'm going to, when you said later, talk about someone who was in the JSEA that had a big impact. For me, it was Joe OConnell. And he was always talking about the signs of the times and how important it was for schools to hold on to their mission, but be responding to the signs of the time. And I think that JSN has done a good job of sticking with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, as you kind of alluded to, you've made it very easy for me to segue into my next few questions, because as you talked about, you sort of touched on a little bit of everything. One of them is the documentation that comes out of the JSN, the resources that they publish. What makes a Jesuit school Jesuit? The standards and benchmarks would be the most recent one. The profile of the graduate at graduation, all of these documents and pieces of research and writing that come out of the JSCA and the JSN on a regular basis. So the next thing I want to ask you about is one of those, a document that has come out of the JSCA/JSN that really stands out to you now and really had an impact.
Well, I think the profile of the graduate and the grad that had just sort of come out, and schools were grappling with it when I moved to Loyola Academy, and so that was part of our work. And the IPP that was developed and articulated, and Ralph Metz's book, and Ignatius New, and some of those things I think were really important, because we tended, schools at that time, and I was working with schools on curriculum, they tend to want to think about what the teacher's doing. And it's so important to focus on what the students are doing, what they're learning, what we can actually see, so that we can get better at it. And I think the power of the grad at grad, and it's also true about our way of proceeding the standards and benchmarks, that what that sort of forces us to do in a good way is take those deep values, ideals, frameworks, the conceptual frameworks that really ground Jesuit education, and encapsulate them or articulate them in language that regular day in and day out people in the schools can sort of know what that means. What are we really looking for? So that when a mission effectiveness team comes, they know what they're looking for. The school that's prepared knows what it's looking for. And once you've got some of those deep core values and ideals articulated in observable, measurable ways, then you can be on the same page and really then collaborate on making things better. So, I chaired the task force that created our way of proceeding, standards and benchmarks for Jesuit Jesuit schools, 21st century Jesuit schools. And that was an exciting process. We did it all, virtually, almost all. We had 1 day and a half.
Ahead of your time.
Oh gosh, yes, we had the longest calls I've ever, and that was, we weren't videoing, we were just doing conference calls, and we would be sometimes on a call for 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
But I think the result is something that is very, very helpful. I mean, I thought the document, What Makes a Jesuit School Jesuit, was a great starting point, in an attempt to do that, to make those ideals more tangible in terms of actual school practice. But then I think our way of proceeding takes it that next step that makes it easier to use and more helpful. So I think that and the grad, those two strike me as being powerful things that have continued to affect Jesuit schools for the better.
Absolutely. And people now use the standards and benchmarks actually for sponsorship review. It's like one of the core documents used in sponsorship reviews for our schools. So yeah, no, great job on that one.
I'm glad about
out of the park. Nailed it.
Right.
So yeah, they really do have they're great documents with these really deep practical uses, which is also so important.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That was a very good, very in-depth answer. So moving on, kind of going through the points that you brought up when you were talking about the mission, one of the things you also mentioned were the colloquia and the symposia and the conferences. So like the programming, the gathering, the seminars were also something. So With those in mind, what is a JSN or JSEA program that you've been a part of that really stands out to you now, and what was the impact of that program?
Well, there are two. I'm going to cheat and talk about the one that I alluded to was the 2020 Visioning
Mm-hmm.
Project. It was a sort of intended to be a futures think tank. I think it happened around 2000. And, then the materials that came out of it were called, Visioning 2020 or 2020 Vision. I can't remember its exact
Mm-hmm.
title. But it was organized by the then leadership of the JSCA, which Joe O'Connell was president, Ralph Metz, Bernie Bouillet, organized that. And I think Gretchen Kane was going to be coming onto, and Carolyn Lausch. So that was sort of a core of JSCA people. And I just was very lucky to be invited. I was working then at Loyola Academy in Wilmette, Illinois. And I was just graced and fortunate to be invited to be one of the 12-member core group. And so we met for 10 days in a sort of retreat center outside of Baltimore, I think. And the core did a lot of thinking and sorting. And the JSEA had, prior to this, I think, surveyed students and surveyed faculty, and they'd gathered a lot of information around the question, okay, we're moving into a new century, a new millennia. What about Jesuit schools do we absolutely not want to lose going forward? And when we look at the signs of the time, when we look at what's likely to be happening down the road by 2020, what should change? What should expand? How should the schools, what should be on their radar as they continue to strive to be excellent? Great questions. So the core team met, beginning and consistently, but then during the time Joe had arranged for some just powerful people from all different fields, the arts and education and government and church, just economics, just all kinds of people to come in reflecting with the core group about, in your field, what do you see as something that's going to be really important in 10 or 15 years? And from what you understand about the mission and vision of Jesuit schools, what should they be, how should they be responding? It was just a fabulous experience. And then afterwards, the core group met to draft some working documents that would, sort of outline and share with the schools what some of the findings were, what some of the directions were. And then many of us, went on the road. I know I did a bunch of presentations, starting at Loyola Academy, but at other places with faculty and staff and Jesuit schools about 2020 vision and what that means and how we might be thinking. So that was a great experience. And then the other thing was the Ignatian Curriculum Institute, which happened at Loyola Academy and now Loyola University. I had just moved to Loyola the year before. And then I was invited by Joe and Ralph and Bernie to be part of the, presenting team, and Pete Musso was also part of that team. And we were having teams from the schools, and I think quite a large number of schools sent teams to look at best practices in curriculum and instruction and how that would impact Jesuit schools. And that too I met so many great people. And then as a result of that, I was invited to go to other schools to talk just with their faculty. And for me, those were two programs that I think were important for the schools. And I felt very blessed and lucky to be invited to be part of them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Those are two big ones too. We've been talking a lot actually about 2020 vision, in particular, it being 2020 now. And so
I was thinking of that. I tried to find, my notes, and I moved from Loyola Academy to Loyola University, and now back to home. And so my materials are everywhere, and I I could not put my hands on it to corroborate what we were saying and how much of it has come true. I mean, some of the things I can remember, but yeah,
Sure.
it is interesting that it's 2020 now.
It's fascinating. And how much of it, yeah, like of course 2020 isn't going how anyone thought that it was going to go, but
Sure.
so much of what came out of that meeting and those documents has continued, has been enduringly relevant even amidst, the wildest the wildest 2020 we could have ever anticipated.
Sure, because, themes, globalization,
Yeah,
diversity, multidisciplinary, um, affective learning, more active engagement of kids, all of those kinds of things, remote learning, all of that were things that were, and here we are.
here we are. It all comes back. So thank you for that answer. And again, as you said, this was one you already touched on, but I'm going to ask you to expand on a JSA or JSN staff member who had a positive impact on you and the way that you approach Jesuit education today, or did approach Jesuit education before you retired.
Well, without a doubt, for me, it was Joe OConnell, and I was so sorry that he passed away so untimely. I think his leadership was just tremendous. He was able to, he had a deep grasp, of course, of the core and could articulate it, but he also had a real sense of not having that stagnate, of moving forward, of asking the questions about, okay, so how does that matter now in this context, and what's the next context, and how does it matter? And I think he was a tremendous facilitator, group facilitator. He had amazing skills, so he could take a group who might not be receptive to where things were going,
Sure.
or where there was some sense they maybe ought to be going, and he could start with where they were and be very respectful of that, and introduce things, and get the process going. So when I was at Loyola Academy and discerning what was next after I'd been there a while, and I was beginning to get the idea of founding the Center for Catholic School Effectiveness, which became the Andrew Greeley Center for Catholic Education at Loyola University Chicago. I wanted to reach out to people who knew me and knew the scene of Catholic education to say, is this really a screwball idea, or is there something here? And Joe was one of the people. So I went to DC and met with him, and he was, very helpful with his insights and encouragement and so on. So, and he also really knew how to have a good time.
That's important.
Yes, and valued people coming together in those ways as being a very important part of any conference or any set of meetings, because that was a way you form community and built trust and understanding. So there's tremendous influence.
Companionship it's a very, and I'm sure a lot of this was Joe OConnell's influence. It's a very important part of all of our gatherings, and we always make sure that companionship is a very core
Yes.
when we're doing the agendas, because it's that companionship from which, yes, you have fun, and yes, you make friends, but I think also that is where a lot of the creativity is fostered.
Yeah.
Is in those friendships that you make.
It's sort of the World Cafe idea. I mean, it's when you're sharing a glass of wine and talking and eating some pretzels that often great ideas generate, and you can capture them.
Absolutely. So in that sort of general vein, I'd like to ask you about a specific fond memory that you associate with the JSC or the JSN. So I've been describing it in other interviews as a moment frozen in time, like just a moment that comes to mind.
I was thinking, and I don't have a moment, but what immediately popped into my mind, and we've already been talking about it, are the socials and the great dinners that we had working in, in the 2020 and the curriculum and all of these pieces that just the people that I had a chance to work with in all of these things were just amazing. So that was, that was real, that struck in my mind. And then sort of two other things, and this sort of is a moment frozen in time, although it's very odd. My first formal encounter with the JSEA, as I mentioned, was going to Los Angeles to talk with them to be a presenter at their deliberations about lay collaboration in the mid-'80s. And was being held at Loyola Marymount in June. And so I thought, okay, wonderful. It's California and it's summer. So I got all my lightweight clothes and I froze. It was so cold. They said, oh, we forgot to tell you about the June gloom.
Oh my gosh.
Apparently in Los Angeles, there is a thing called June gloom. And however the trade winds and all of that's happening, a huge gloom. I mean, it's gray and cloudy and really cold.
I've never heard of this.
I just absolutely was. So I do remember the June gloom connected with my first encounter with the JSN.
I love that. Oh my gosh.
And then my other thing that I always remember, in addition to the impact of the socials, is, and I don't think I'm alone in this, after about almost every meeting, at least while Joe OConnell was organizing them, in the feedback, I always wanted to say, this was fabulous and a day too long. He always wanted to be sure there was plenty of time, but you can only stay with things. And so with many of the colloquia and so on, I say, but a day shorter, but a day shorter. And I know other people have, and he never budged on that. And he probably was right, because look at all the good stuff that came out.
Yeah, sure. Oh yeah, that's something I remember when I came on, that was something we grappled with, and especially the colloquia, the 2016 and then 2019. That was something we're like, okay, like, what are we doing about Friday? What are we doing with Friday? Because I think it is a day that, and it is funny too, because the catch-22 you get is like, you want to give people, it's like whenever you end it, people are going to leave early regardless, kind of thing. So it's like, so when do we end it so that we kind of split that difference of, like, we don't have too many people just like dipping the night before. And I think that's so funny, because that is something we all talk about a lot, is like, okay, so what do we do with this last day? What do we, it shouldn't be too program heavy, but want to have something. So I resonate with that. Absolutely. Well, great. That was my last specific question. For now, as we begin to wrap up our conversation, I'd like to ask just if there's anything that you'd like to leave us with, if there is something you want to make sure you say, if there is, anything you want to make sure isn't left out of our conversation today.
Well, one thing is that I want to say that I think it was very forward-looking and insightful to form the JSEA and now the JSN. I remember that when I was working in the Archdiocese, so working with a range of high schools and getting involved nationally with the NCEA and a lot of places, it seemed to me that schools that could have a network of other schools that were working on the same charism and mission and vision broadly, but had to do it themselves, it was so valuable. And I thought that the Jesuit schools were so lucky that they had something like the JSN. And now I know there are some other, the De La Sallian brothers, the Zavarians, there are Mercy Sisters, there are other networks that I think have been formed. But I think there was whoever sort of envisioned the need to have a national organization to support schools on their journey toward continued excellence and so on. It was really, really a great thing. So I congratulate them. I realized when I saw your message, the JSN started in the year I got married. So we
Oh,
both are
wow.
celebrating 50th anniversary.
Oh, happy anniversary. That's
Thank you. And
wonderful.
in that spirit, I want to say happy anniversary to the JSN, and I hope that there is great support to continue the work, because I do think it's been very impactful and very important. And it's been a huge, wonderful, positive plus in my career. I've learned a great deal and met some wonderful people and felt that it was a real opportunity through the JSCA to be following God's call in terms of, education and where we're going in the future. So happy anniversary, JSN.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for talking to me today. And yeah, again, happy anniversary to you. That's fantastic. So we'll sign off now. Again, thank you so much for your time. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
I will
I'm
hopefully.
I'm going to look forward to seeing the other interviews
Oh,
from the
yes, I can't wait.
people like Gretchen that I have worked with over the years, and it will be fun to hear what they've got to say.
Absolutely. All right. Well, take good care.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Julia.